I would like to give you a tutorial on how to build a Hello World component with Joomla Component Builder. Joomla Component Builder is a Joomla component which helps you to develop Joomla components quite easily. I originally developed this application or extension for myself, just so that I can maintain the code in a very consistent and shareable way. For example, since there are a lot of concepts in any components that you build for Joomla, which we could call conventions or boilerplate implementation, these things are usually always the same. And so I wanted something like a wireframe that could just take care of all that for me all the time. And even if Joomla was to change, I could just make a change in one place and then compile it into all my components that I've developed, and then just have them run again stable on Joomla, instead of having to go to every one of those components. And that means we've gone beyond just developing the most basic parts of a component. We've actually gone and ventured into some of its complexities. And that is why even showing you an Hello World component being built by JCB, Joomla Component Builder, it is still going to end up being quite an advanced component. Now, since I've already mentioned to you that I really built JCB for myself, and it wasn't originally intended as a community project, just something that I wanted to use, it has since become a community project, and the code is open on GitHub, and most of you might already know that. But that also means that I didn't think about the complexity when I was developing the component. I just had desired functionality in mind, and I didn't really care that it is complicated to achieve those things, because I set the conventions in place and obviously know how to use them. And so that's why JCB on the surface might look just like any other of those component builders out there, but when you start using it and knowing some of its secrets, it actually is amazing how conventions, even conventions that you would use when you develop components yourself, would actually make JCB do things that are quite amazing. So you will end up realizing that JCB has actually a ton of functions. Most of them, well, most of the basic ones of those, we have tried, or I have tried to explain in the tutorials that you can find on YouTube. You can actually access the tutorials from this link here. Looking at the tutorials would be the most easiest way for you to discover some of JCB's hidden secrets. But at the same time, it really is only the basics, although it's quite a lot of tutorials, and I know that I usually I elaborate more than maybe is necessary. And yet, that's because I want to make sure that you are able to not only do basic things, but even advanced things. Now, if you come to JCB and you do not have PHP as a language, that you don't know it well, and you do not know Joomla's API, then you shouldn't expect to build complex components with JCB. Complexity is only possible with JCB the more you know yourself, because the more you know, the more you would have a perspective on how these implementations should function. And most of the time, if you do have that perspective, you would start knocking and opening the correct doors and set up the correct relationships to have those conventions dynamically be built for you by JCB. If you are very good at PHP programming and you do know the Joomla API, you should be very happy to simply go into the compiler and really start reading the code. The compiler's code's files are actually alphabetically ordered A, B, C, D, and so you can start with A and work your way down. So the first one is A underscore get.php and so forth. Reading this code and understanding how JCB's compiler constructs the code would send you on a treasure hunt where you would discover amazing features that work just out of the box. And yet, having this under the hood, I realize we all need to start with the basics, and that is just to build a Hello World tutorial, just to know how to actually combine the different concepts that is required for a component to be fully functional and portable and useful. And that's really what I want to actually give you a tutorial of in this video. There are two concepts which I want to mention before we start. One of it is patience, the other one is perseverance. I know within any programming career, these are invaluable aspects, which if you have them, it'll make the whole difference whether you are only a normal programmer or an extremely good programmer. You see, because those of us who have stuck around and have just been going at it, we have realized that many might consider us being genius, and yet it's only because it's disguised by perseverance. Because we continually try and try and try until we resolve or succeed. This is what has made JCB possible, and this is also what would make you successful in using JCB. It is not a component which I can claim has no internal conflicts or has no inconsistencies, but it is most certainly a component with which I myself have developed countless many programs, components itself from it, which I am maintaining, and I am planning to start pushing some of these components into the community. It's just that I have not seen the need for doing so yet. For the initial development were mostly for clients who has directly approached me. Now, having said all this, let me take you through the basic steps, building one piece upon another, so that you would fully understand how to build a component in JCB. I think it's self-explanatory that you would need a Joomla website. This Joomla website would preferably be on a developing environment, which is either offline or on a server which isn't necessarily used in production. This is not because JCB itself is unsafe or any of that. It's simply just it's more convenient. If you have it offline, you can open the code in your IDE, and since JCB has the feature to extract this customized code out of your component and put it back into your component on compilation, a feature which will not be discussed during this tutorial but does exist, a local developing environment is most ideal for this. I know that you could, with certain protocol, set up a tunnel between your desktop and your live server and still have this kind of interaction of editing code live and then compiling and seeing changes, and that's all good, because if you're able to manage that kind of complexity, I don't need to tell you anything about how to set up an environment. But what I would suggest though is that when you are busy trying to install JCB and there is some limitations in a shared hosting environment, then I would encourage you to try and first resolve that or move your development offline. So when you got your Joomla website ready, obviously you'd log in. Having logged in, we would first need to install JCB. So I'm simply going to go to manage and install. There are many ways for you to install JCB. You could download the package, you can grab the URL from GitHub, you could also install it from the web. It is listed with Joomla. Now if you type in JCB and search, it actually brings up JCB here, but it would not necessarily always do that. I have recently discovered if I type in component builder, which is actually its name in the listing, it doesn't even come up, which to me was, wow, couldn't understand how that happens. If you do not find the component in the search, this is the component. Then you could go down to an area called tools and then developing tools. JCB is one of the listed developing tools. Here it is only listed as a component builder. So you can click on that and simply click install. This will then grab a URL from GitHub. This is the same URL you could have just used here, as you can see. That would have done the same thing. But we can use the Joomla installer and simply click install. This would depend on your own network, how fast this takes. It could take a while. This is quite a big file and it's part of the places where there might be a limitation if used outside of a local developing environment. Okay, we've got JCB installed. Now let's open it. There's just a few small things that we need to lay down as foundation stones in understanding how a component, basically most Joomla components, are constructed. We're going to build a component called Hello World. The way to set up a component is you need to first understand field types, then you need to set up the fields you'll need, and then you need to set up the views that you want in your component. These views also map back to the database, and these are what we call admin views. So your admin views have fields, and these are usually your database columns. So these are your database tables, these are your database columns, and these are your field types. So you got a text field, a radio, a list, multiple selection, a checkbox, a date field. You got many types of fields. But each field independently is linked to a type, but also there are some database settings within each field as it gets linked into the admin view, since the fields form the columns of the tables of the admin views. This is how you set up a component. Once you've set up a component, then you basically are done with what we would call the back end. The back end of the component is what's always needed to be done first. Well, you could argue differently, but the point is, within JCB, you'd first build the back end and then only add in the front end. And the front end usually doesn't have its own database. It actually pulls its data from the back-end database. Now, having explained some of that, let's show you this in action. So in JCB, it already ships with quite a lot of field types. So if we open the field types area, you'll see that there are many field types already set up. JCB is built in a way that it can be extended, like subform is a new field type which was recently introduced into the Joomla community. It also replaces an old field type called repeatable fields. Repeatable fields is a field type I would encourage you not to use anymore, since most of you might know JCB used repeatable fields quite excessively, and yet due to the fact that Joomla is now discontinuing this field type, we had to migrate all of our repeatable fields to subform fields, and it was an amazing, huge process. But yes, part of the reason why I'm redoing the Hello World tutorial is because of the fact that subforms are now being used all across JCB, and there's been a little few changes in how things are implemented. And so here you can see all the field types that have been set up in JCB already. You can always add new field types. So as JCB continues and Joomla continues to evolve and become better at what it does, so we will be adding more field types, and whenever we would be confronted by a field type that needs a little bit of extra tweaking within the compiler, I would hope to be ahead of all of you most of the time in adding that field type in there if it needs that. Most of the time field types do not need extra help. It's only field types like subform that actually does. But field types like URL and text and tell and SQL tag, it needed some extra help. But most of these don't, because basically the way a field type works is that it really helps you set up what we know as the properties. So the property has a name, it has a default value, it is either adjustable or not adjustable, it's mandatory or not mandatory, translatable, and then you can give it a little description so that when you use the field type you can always come back to this. This information can be gathered from going through the Joomla core libraries, because these field types really are only mapping Joomla's own implementation of these field types. So if we were to open a field type that's already been created, like the text field, you'll see that these properties are already there and in place. So the field type is text, the name is any text. When we say that the type is text, then this is not adjustable, so we leave this unticked. If it is adjustable, we can tick it. It's most certainly mandatory, and so that is how you set up field types. I'm not going to go into this too deep, since there is extra tutorials on how to do field types. I just wanted to give you a brief overview of the fact that most of the field types already are created and ready for you to use. So you would most of the time simply start with fields. Now there are quite a few fields already here, but I'm going to go on as they are not there, and I'm going to create basically 2 or 3 fields that we can use in our Hello World component. So first field I'm going to create, click on new, then I'm going to select text as my field type, and you see that information in the field type, mandatory and everything, all this information here is actually brought in by Ajax from the field type. So if I was to click on this button here, just to give you a quick demonstration, and I was to just say change this to T, like 3 of them, and save and close, and then go back to fields and click new, then select text field again, you'll see that now it added 3 T's in there, because this whole structure is being built from the field type's default settings, which we just looked at. So I'm going to go change that back quickly, and maybe just put a little something in here, the description, for you to see what I mean. So creating a field, we haven't really started with it, I've just been demonstrating the field type, but okay, I'm going to take text again, and now you'll see those O's are showing up here. So this means that this whole area is actually dynamically populated from the values that are set up in the field type, and so is this XML structure here. It usually populates it with the demo or default values that you added when you created the field type. Since JCB ships with most field types already in place, it appears like this is something we have done, but really it's something that you can extend and even change. So for example, if you know that the text field type has more properties than we have set up, you can go in and add more to it. You can simply click on this, edit here, or before creating a field, you can go to the field types and open the text area, the text field type, and here just click the green button and add more properties, and then those properties will dynamically also appear within the area where you create the fields. So this again is just wanting to show you that JCB has tried its very best to be scalable and basically customizable to your own desires, so that it isn't just blocked in to what we have set hard into code, but that it is movable and therefore scalable. So having looked at field types, I think enough, let's create our first field. So it's going to be a text field. We're going to call it greetings. So I'm going to update the label with greetings. This is what will be visible in the database. Greetings singular is going to be the database name. I'm going to leave most of the others just default. Let's see, autocomplete is on, validation, we can leave all of those, it doesn't really matter. Let's just maybe change the hint. Okay, and then I'm also gonna just remove the description. Definitely take out the default text, otherwise it will always appear. And now, with regards to the database, that is what these features are all about. Since text fields can differ, we didn't come out and say, well, all of them are going to be this size. We left it up to you to decide what kind of text field this is going to be. And really, it's all up to you. Obviously, that would mean that you'd need to know a little bit more about MySQL and databases to really effectively use this. Most of the time it is available on Google, so if you do not know what would be the best for a text field or a date field, you can Google that, or you could simply go and look at Joomla's own implementation. It's got an article manager, and you can go into its XML database and look at what database values was used and just use the same. Whatever be the case, you should be able to actually navigate through this without much problems, since that is what would be required. You need to have perseverance, you need to be curious, dig through things, and doing that you will eventually succeed. Because these values are all movable, that means that setting them wrong could break things. And that's why I always encourage those who are going to use JCB to really do a little bit of homework and to prepare themselves to get involved in programming more effectively. And that would only be beneficial to all of us, I suppose, because good programmers makes good programs and makes the web a safer place. So, having created our first field, I think I'm gonna just reuse name and maybe also description. Those are part of the demo component, but since fields can be linked into any admin view and therefore belong to any component, it doesn't bother the fact that it is linked to the demo component already. What is though true is that if you change it, it'll actually affect both components. Okay, so having created our field types and also now a field, let's create a admin view. admin views, as I already explained, is really the back end of your component. And so you'd need to do some thinking and maybe draw some up. There's a lot of tutorials around the web about object-oriented development, which talks about use cases and all kinds of discussions, and trying to sort of come up with a perspective of what do you want to build, how should it work, what should be where, what should have its own classes, what should have its own tables, where are we going to put what. And really that kind of work you need to do before coming to JCB. JCB isn't really going to help you with that. And so once you've got all that planned, then you would come here, create your fields, create your admin views, which basically is your tables, and then link them to a component. And once you've done that, you've basically laid the foundation of your application, and you can start working on what will make it unique and special, which is the front end. So first, admin view. The system name is really just for you to identify the view if there be more than one view with the name greetings. So let's say you've built quite a few components that deals with Hello World and now you've got 3 or 4 different variations of greetings. Now you might want to just say, okay, this is the first one, and by doing that it's identifiable within the drop-down list across your application of JCB. You'll see that when we would later select the greeting, that the system name is used in the drop-down list. So we're going to have a single record and a list record. Single record is also what we understand as the edit view. So that's when you are looking at one record and you are editing that record in the admin area. That's the single record. That's also what will be used when you actually tweak JCB to add an edit option to the site area of your website. Since JCB can do that for you on the fly, this single record would also affect the front end of your component in that case, which we will show and demonstrate as we go along. So for now, I'm just going to call this greeting and the list record greetings. Obviously we want to have the ability to read and write to this table. Now when we say this is a read-only, it means that the data that is in this actual admin area is not going to be able to be changed via Joomla, unless obviously you've added some JavaScript and some other nice conventions around your component that sort of creates data for that area dynamically as people use the component, which in that case you might use this feature. But I must tell you, I've hardly ever used it. I'm not even sure why I added it but it's there, and I know maybe some of you might find it useful. This basically turns all the fields in the area as read-only, and when you try and change them, they never get submitted to the database. So we would by default always leave it to read and write. Then you give it a short description. We'll go to settings and we'll see that, fields and conditions. We'll see that this button to create admin field conditions will show once the admin view is saved for the first time. So you cannot add fields to this admin view if you haven't saved it. That is one of the changes that now came in from us moving away from repeatable fields to subform fields. The admin view is a table on its own, and its relationship with the fields is also a table on its own. So at this stage, unfortunately, you need to first not click save and close, but just save once, so that it basically creates this admin view in the database. And now if you go to fields and conditions, you'll be able to link fields and create conditions. We are not going to be creating conditions, since we are basically illustrating or demonstrating a very basic component. We're just going to create a linked fields. Now linked fields are basically the fields that we created previously. So we will click on create. It's going to ask us to be sure that all our work has been saved in the admin view, because if it isn't and we click OK, it will be lost. So make sure your work is saved before you clicking OK. This will now open an area where you can link fields to your admin view. This looks very similar to the pop-up we had with repeatable fields, except that it's basically its own view now. So if we click on this green button here, it opens an area where we now select the fields we want to use. So we're going to have a name field, and that's a text field. We want it to show in the atom list view. We want it to show first. We're going to have it behave as a title. We want it sortable, searchable, not filterable, because then every name would be a filter. That's too much. But definitely linkable. This means if someone clicks on the name, it'll open the greeting so you can edit it. Now, we only have two tabs at this stage. I'm not going to go into great detail about the tabs this time around. If you want to know more, please go through the tutorials and look up tabs to see more on this subject. I'm going to let it be in the left in the tab, and in the tab I want it to be the first item. I'm not going to add any permissions to this, but there is an editing permission available at this stage if you wanted to. That would create permissions around this field, which you can tweak who can edit it and who can't. You can also control this from a global view perspective or on a field level. These are some of the hidden advantages that JCB has in handling permissions across your component quite easily. Now the next field we want to add is greetings. We want the greetings to also be in the list view, and we want it to be second. We want it to be searchable, sortable and searchable, and it doesn't need to be a link. We want it to be on the right hand in the tab, and we want it to be first. And sure, that's basically all we need. And then we'll click save and close. This will now basically link those fields to this admin view. If we now again open the fields and conditions, we will see that those fields are here, and with all the variations that we have selected ready to use. Okay, so having our admin view set up, we can actually now go and create our component. So we can either click save and close, or we can simply click close. We haven't made any changes in this view since we've come back. This area has already been saved, so we could click close. But clicking save and close is always the safe choice, I suppose. So now that our admin view is in place, let's go create the component. Click new. We're again going to give our component a system name. Since this is the second Hello World tutorial, we'll call it version 2. Now we're also going to give it a name which is the same as the first one, Hello World. We're going to give it a code name of Hello World, and it's version 2. I'm not going to explain too much about all these other switches, basically just that we'll need to add company names, author name, email, website, and a short description. Now that we have those in place, the next thing to do would be to add an admin view. Now, since the admin view can only be added once the component's been saved for the first time, let's save it. Great, our component has been saved. Opening the admin view, we now can link admin views to this component. There are two places to do this. Under settings, you can click on component admin view. You can click on this one here, or you could, in the admin views, click on create. Both these buttons take you to the same place. This used to be the old way in how people would add admin views to their component, and that's why we left it here. But within the new JCB, after our transition away from repeatable fields, we actually can handle all of it within the admin view tab, and just click create. We are sure we have saved all our work, so we can click OK. Again, we are faced with something that looks very similar to when we were linking the fields, except that now we are dealing with the admin view and linking admin views to this component. So I'm going to click on this plus button here to open our first line. We basically just want to link the greeting. We're going to leave the default icon of Joomla, but there are a whole list of icons available. These icons are icon moons, which are the Joomla default icons that are part of the Joomla backend and front end, I suppose. And you can search this, just search that phrase, I suppose, and you'll find on Joomla's website a whole picture map of all these icons. Then I most certainly want this view to be part of the main menu. I want an add record on the dashboard. I want a list. That means clicking on something and it shows us the list of greetings. I want it in the sub menu. The auto check-in feature, basically components get checked out when somebody, not components, items. So when you create a record that are stored in the database and someone else comes and wants to edit that record, you want to prevent people from working on the same record at the same time, since one of them is going to lose their work. So Joomla has this feature by which you can check out an item, and then when someone else tries to open it, it tells them, hey, sorry, it's not available, it's checked out. The problem we've seen though is that this checkout can be problematic because people don't save. They just open it maybe to have a look at it, and then instead of clicking cancel or close, they just click back, and the item doesn't get checked back into the database. So the auto check-in feature is a nice add-on that JCB has set in place, which basically you can set that an item which is checked out longer than a day is obviously one that was missed and should be checked in automatically. This is one of the reasons why I developed JCB, because I have all these little tweaks that I want in all my views, but I know that if Joomla changes something and I need to change this little tweak, going to every single view is like, oh, so cumbersome. And so here you simply click whether you'd like this, and if Joomla makes a change that we need to now adapt this feature, we just change it in the compiler and it immediately compiles correctly for all the components mapped in it. The other feature which I think is also great is this keeping of history. If I want to keep track of all the changes made to any item of greeting, then I just need to tick this keep history, and JCB will dynamically add all the needed structures so that Joomla's integrated history component will work alongside your third-party component and keep track of every item and its changes. So that is just a tick box, and JCB does the work. The has metadata basically adds the metadata fields to the view, so you don't need to add them. It gets added just by ticking this box. Then also, does this view have access, public, special, or registered? All these access levels. Do you want to implement these levels of access on this view? Usually you would use this if you want the view to actually be editable on the front end of the site, because then you'll use the access to control some of these. I'll show you more of that as we go along. So I'll just tick this as yes. I want it to have an import function, and like we said, we want to add a site edit and create view for this admin view. Yes. And then we want it to be first. So this admin view basically is going to have all the features that an admin view can have by default in JCB. And as you would realize when we start demonstrating it, although it's as easy as ticking this box, the code that JCB is going to write to do this implementation is quite stable and yet dynamic, that as Joomla evolves and changes, we can tweak these codes in the compiler and make sure that it remains stable this way. Good. Now save and close. Now that we've linked this admin view to the component, we can now go to admin views and we'll see this admin view. We'll even see the icon. We can click on this little pencil here, and this will actually take us to the admin view. Obviously, again, making sure that all your work has been saved in this area. Click OK if it is, and you'll see that it opens the admin view where we linked the fields. And we can actually now work in the admin view from the component. Now there are areas in the admin view I didn't demonstrate, like the permissions, the tabs, the linked views, and I'm not going to do much of that. I'm just going to add some permissions because I want to demonstrate the permissional structure regarding the front-end management of editing these items. I'm just going to use the core. There is the option of using what is known as the view edit instead of core edit. Then it means its relationship is just for this view. I want it to be related to the core, which means that it's not going to be only related to this view, but whatever I change in the core will affect this view. For more explanation on the permissions, there is this tutorial which is available in the description, and you can go watch this tutorial and also maybe do some changes, compile the component and look at the code. Look at the code and look at the code. That's all I can say for most questions being asked, because the code really tells you what has been done. There is many ways for you to learn how JCB does things, by making changes and then compiling your component and looking at what changed. Usually using something like Git will be very useful in discovering the changes. There's also a way for you to know where in the compiler specific code has been created, which I will show you as we continue. So since we've made changes, I'll simply click on Save and Close, and this will take us back to the component. So being back in the component, we'll see that everything is still the way we left it, and there are quite a few things around the admin view which I'm not going to go into depth during this tutorial. I would encourage you to watch the tutorials that are already online for actual explanation on all these features. But to demonstrating a Hello World component, we have done quite enough regarding the backend. So all that now remains is basically to compile. So we'll click Save and Close, and we'll go to the compiler, select our component and compile. Great. That means we've just written 9,000 lines of code, created 51 folders and 122 files, and if we were to have manually written this without any boilerplate tool or wire script that could help us write all the classes and tables and stuff, and it took us 5 seconds to write one line, it would have taken us 25 hours or about 3 8-hour days. That's how long it would have taken you to do this manually. So just right there, JCB has already saved you quite a lot of time. Now the component can be installed by simply clicking this button or grabbing the URL and going to the normal installer, because it has actually compiled a shippable Joomla component package which can be installed on any Joomla any Joomla website. Now, one thing I didn't do is I didn't actually select a component image. So when we select it, you see there is no image showing as there is with this one. So I think I want to quickly go back. I'm going to clear the temporary folder and just go select at least the demo components image as our Hello World component. So in the component there is this area to select an image. I'm going to click select, and I've selected the demo components package so that we have something. So I'm going to save and close again, and now go back to the compiler and compile it again. Now I'm going to click on install. If I now go here, we'll see that there's now a new component in this Joomla website, and I'm going to open it in a new tab, and there we go. We've got our component installed. It has a greetings tab and a add greetings tab. We also have not selected images for those, so let's quickly do that. I'm going to go back to the admin views, and in the greetings I'm going to click on greetings first as an admin view, and here you see there is a place for icons and the add icon. I'm going to select some. So I've selected this little bucket as the icon for greetings. I'm going to just add one for adding a greeting with a little green plus. And there we got it, 2 icons. I'm going to click save and close. So now I've got greetings set up, and I'm going to go and compile this again. And that's usually how things go. We go make a change, we come back to the compiler, compile it, install it, and go look at the component. And also, when it gets a little bit more advanced, we can not only go and look at the component in Joomla, but we also go and look at the code. So there we got it. The 2 icons are in place. If I click add on greeting, we see that there's the name, there's the greeting, and there's also all these other fields added by default. So the created and the metadata and the permissions are all in place. That is how you would set up a basic Hello World component. If we go to the options, we'll see that it has this check-in timer, and you can change it to 5 hours, the one I explained, that checks in the items. We also have the history version enabled and set to remember 10 versions of any item created as a greeting. We also have the permissional structure in place, which includes a greeting access, greetings, batch, dashboard, and so forth, which are all the switches related to the greetings area. So now that we have the admin area basically done, let's continue to the front end. I'm going to illustrate to you on the front end how to view greetings that were created, how to edit greetings that were created, and how to add more greetings from the front end to this component. Let's close out of the components edit area. The first thing we need to do is we need to create what is known as a dynamic get. There are 2 ways to get to the dynamic get area. The one is to click on this add dynamic get. The others would be basically in the submenu to go to dynamic get and then click new. We're going to need 2 dynamic gets. We're going to need one to basically return a list of greetings, and then we'll need one to return one greeting, because the one dynamic get is going to return for us all the greetings that are available and published. The second one is when we click on one of those greetings, it should open only that greeting. So we're going to use the name as who is being greeted, and then the greeting will only show when we actually click on the name and then show that individual's greeting. So that's part of how we think about this at this stage. Then in this area where we can see the full greeting, we are going to add an edit button, and in the list area we are going to add a create button. But these create and edit buttons are going to be controlled by the permissional structure which JCB puts into your component by you just saying that it should be there. So setting up a dynamic get is quite easy. You first know that, okay, I'm going to use a backend view which is related to my component, and then I'm going to select that backend view. See, it says here greetings first. So like I said before, the system name is what is used in the drop downs. So here we select greetings first. This one is going to bring back a list query. We don't want any pignation, and we really don't need all of this. We don't need the asset ID. We can leave the created by and the created. We can take out the modified. The version we can also leave. The hits and the ordering, that's fine. Now the greeting we most certainly don't need in the list. We only need the name. Now, okay, let's give it a name that we can sort of identify when we start setting up the site view. We call this list greetings, and then in brackets name only, so we know, okay, this is what it is. I'm going to save that. You didn't need to save it. We could have just gone right into tweaking the data without saving. What the data tweak gives us is it gives us a little bit of control on the writing that JCB will do regarding this query. So for example, we want it to be ordered. Now the ordering is called ordering a dot ordering. So we want to order it ascending by the order set in the database. The other filter we want to add is we want to make sure that it only returns published items. So in the where area we place published and we say equal 1. So only published values be returned. There are some other features around the tweak area which I suppose goes beyond just a normal hello world component, but there are tutorials about this on Joomla, on YouTube, in that playlist that I've already referred to quite a few times. Then there's a joined area which we're not going to use, but it is a very nice way of linking to other component tables that I've got any kind of relationship. There needs to be a relationship between the main table and the join table. But like I said, we're not going to go into this. We are simply going to do the most basic, which is what we've got here, and we're going to say save a new, so we can do another one. So the next one is just going to be a greeting, just simple greeting. We want it to be one item. Again, we're going to do a backend view, again from the greetings list, and this time we really want the name and the greeting. We can still use the published. We don't need the modified by. We can leave those. We don't need the ordering. We could have left out the hit in the previous one we set up. Now let's do a little tweak to make sure that it doesn't allow someone to grab an unpublished value by just adding an ID in the URL or something. Okay, so that's okay. Got this. Oh yes. Now we need to add a filter. We're going to use the ID, basically passing the ID via the URL. So the state will be ID, and it is going to be a ID equals. So that's really what makes the item load, is this filter type. And there are many ways to load items. And yes, this is a little bit more complex than you might want it to be, but believe me, it gives you freedom and ability to build quite amazing things. And so please go and watch the tutorial on Dynamic Get. On GitHub there is actually a place, let me just show you, called the wiki. And in the wiki there is links to all the different tutorials, and here is the Dynamic Get, and you should really watch all of that, even the second one. And yeah, well, my encouragement is to really watch everything. I have often seen people ask questions in the issue area which are dealt with in the tutorials, and I'm sorry, we all have a lot of things to do, and so if I don't answer those questions but simply point you to the tutorials, I hope you'll understand. Okay, so we've got in our Dynamic Get all the values selected that we want, and also how to limit it. The tweak is in place, and the limiting factors. We don't need to join it to any other table. We're simply gonna return these values. Let me see. We could add the username values if we wanted. So if we wanted to show who created this, we could say created by, go to joint, click on the joint database tables, not view, because we want to use the user table, and we basically want a single item returned, and here it will be created by, and in the joint field it will be BID, and we basically want, let's see, the username. That's it. We don't need the ID, we already got that. So just the username, and we could just say let's call it creator or greeted by. Okay, so he's the one sending the greeting. There we go. Save and close. So now we've got two dynamic gets, a list greeting and a greeting. This is what you need to build first. Basically, again, starting at the database, looking at what is the data I want on the page. What do I want to show the people looking at the page? And by that, determining really what the data is you're going to grab from the database, and giving it system names that are identifiable, because now the next thing to do is to create a site view. Now there is such a thing as layouts and templates that all can work together with site views. I'm not going to illustrate that now or demonstrate it. Basically, if you want to know more about that, look at the tutorials on YouTube. I'm just simply going to build two site views, and yeah, let's go ahead and do that. Okay, the first site view we're going to call greetings, and we're going to give it a name called greetings and a code name greetings. Now the code name is significant because you don't want it to clash with admin views that you've already created that are going to be edit views on the front. So since the list view is not being placed on the front of your component, only the edit view, that means the edit view's name is greeting. So we can't set a code name for the front called greeting, otherwise they will actually, conflict. So I'm just going to use greeting, and for the single I'm going to use greet. Okay, so just to give you a little reason, explanation on why I'm doing things the way I'm doing it. So the little description here. I'm gonna just place a little heading. And adding it like that will actually mean that this little string will get added to your language file. So that's how you create language strings. It's just adding this snippet, or even just this anywhere in JCB will actually create a language string. Okay, now over here we are going to select the list greeting, and the reason why there are two of these is that the one is what we will act upon in the compilation. The other one is just for you to look. So if you end up let's say here and click save, it will not be playing any role whatsoever in the compilation. It will play a role when you export a JCB package, but that's a whole different subject. I'm not going to even deal with that. So yeah, the good practice would be that these two actually are the same, the main and the dynamic get. But since you can add custom gets, now we don't have any custom gets set up, so you can't select any, but you can add more than just your normal main get to a site view. You can add a main get and then a bunch of custom gets, which brings a whole ton of data to the page from different variations and relationships, which I know it's a little bit beyond the Hello World component, but it is there and it actually does work very well. It's just that you'll need to do some homework and tutorials and so forth. But we want the list greeting, and so this list greeting gives us a few snippets. Now do know that the snippets are really not always accurate, because it's very difficult for me to always know exactly how the implementation is going to work out. So I'm giving you a snippet which is how I expect you to use the data, but you can adjust that, and this is where your knowledge of PHP will really come into play. You should know that this and that little arrow items is because we are working with an object, and the what does it mean and how to use an object and how to interact with an object, how to parse over it, how to grab its values, how to update its values. All this is part of your own background that you need to bring to JCB. JCB is not going to, at this stage, crank out customized admin view site views, or the way it does the admin views, because my idea was that when it comes to site views, I always want to do something different, and I just want to have the ease of getting all the data on the page and then be creative. And so I haven't spent much time to make this as automatic as I want the setup of the backend and the admin views, because this is really what makes your component different from every other component out there. And here we want to encourage you to really do a lot of preparation and thinking about data structures and relationships, because your dynamic get can grab from so many data places and bring all that data to you in a nice object which you can then parse and display with a lot of permissional switches, as I will show you in a moment. So that's just giving you a little backdrop on why the dynamic get and the site view, even the custom admin view, its relationships and why it is like that. Okay, so basically looping through those items is these two strings is all we need. And then I could grab a list view. Let's see. We are busy working on adding the Bootstrap library to JCB. At the moment, we've basically got UIKit version 2 linked to JCB. And I've now selected the list option for this UIKit. UIKit is a library developed by UTheme. If you do not know UIKit, I would encourage you to actually go Google that, and then you'll see it's quite a nice library to use. We have voted that Bootstrap is the better one, and so we are migrating to Bootstrap, but we'll still support UIKit as much as we can. So for now, just to get things going, we're simply gonna loop over the items, show the name. Nothing is yet clickable, nothing is editable. It's just to get you introduced to using site views. Save and close. Now we're going to go back to our component, and we're going to add the site view to it. You might ask, why don't we just add the component to the site view when we create the site view? And that was an idea that I did play with, but because of database relationships and all kinds of reasons, I felt that the better approach would be to link site views at admin at the component area instead of at the site area. And this gives us the option to use site views quite easily within other components. That was really the idea behind it. We might rethink this and we might reshuffle this in the future. I mean, this is the first time I built such a component called JCB. And who knows what happens if we start refactoring it and more advanced programmers get involved. It might become even far better than it is now, but this is how it works at the moment. So you go to site views and you'd click create link site views, and then you would basically select that greeting site view. You'd say, yes, I want to have an admin menu, be able to add a menu to the front of my website with this view. I want this view to use metadata. This is going to be this component's default view. I want it to control access. We'll look at that again. But I want that access to that its default be public. So this is basically, again, making use of all the options. And save and close. So now if we go back to compiling our component, there's no changes being done to the database. I need to maybe just give you a heads up here. If you're adding new tables, JCB is built to actually know that and add the tables to a SQL update, which when you update the component, it automatically updates the database. But it's still important for you to actually check that it does this, for there could be a reason that it thinks that it's not necessary. Yet I've tried to I've tried to build enough things in place so that it will actually pick up that you've added either a field or a new view to the component, and that the component now needs to increment a version and release a table update. But sometimes that is not happening, and then even if you update your component, the database is not being updated necessarily. And so that's just something you need to keep your finger on, make sure that that happens. For most part, JCB will take care of that. And since now in this upgrade we have only added a front end, we haven't touched the database, everything about that is just the way it was before. So we can, without any concerns, just compile and reinstall the component and then go and add it to the front so we can sort of look at what has happened. Okay, now just a heads up. When you add a front-end site view and you said that its default should be public, but it's not the first time you're installing the component, then that default cannot be set to the database, because it's a default that only gets set the first time the component gets installed. I don't want to go into all the technical reasons for that, but you could go into the component script file and you can search through it to see what I mean. Because it's actually a function that gets added to the script file and only gets implemented within the first installation of the component. Now that's important, and if you do not even follow what I was saying now and why I said it, then I hope you'll get to understand it as I try and demonstrate these things. Before you can add the greetings to a site menu, let's just at least add a few greetings. Okay, so we've got at least 4 greetings in place, and now we can actually add that list view to a front-end site view. So we go to menus and go to main menu, select the menu type, click Hello World, Greetings. That was a previous component. Okay, everything else looks good. So we've got greetings set as the home of this website, and we're going to click Save and Close. There we go. We've got home and Hello World Greetings. That should mean that if we click on this preview, the front end of the site, we should see the greetings. It's going to say the page isn't redirecting properly. And the reason is, like I explained, we set the front site view that it should have access control, which means you can control who sees this page. Not that it's just open to everyone, but you can say only this group can see it or only that group can see it. But since we haven't set that, it by default doesn't allow anyone. Now, we said that it's by default should be public, but like I explained when I gave you that heads up, it only sets that default the first time the component is installed. So it is the way you should ship the component. If you only add that feature later, you'll need to do custom scripting in the script area, which is the beyond Hello World component tutorial, to update the database and ensure that this view is actually public. The manual way to do this is basically to go to the Hello World component, click on Options, then go to Permissions and scroll down to the area where you see Greetings Site Access. Select the public group and change this site access to Allow. This will now ensure that the site area is actually available to the public. So having refreshed the public area, we now see James, William, Sarah and Koos. All of them loading as expected. Okay, now let's add a link to James so that when you click it, you actually see the greeting that James should receive. So we go back to the site views and we open the greetings. Now we want to add a link here, but there is a better way of doing a link in JCB, which really takes care of all the controller issues. When we go to the front end of the component and we open the model for greetings, we'll see that there is the getItems method, and in it we are basically checking whether this item has an alias. If it does have an alias and an ID, it actually creates what is known as a slug, and this alias and ID gets combined into the slug. Since we know that our greetings area does not have an alias, in fact it only has an ID, it will only end up with an ID in the slug. So let's go add an alias to our greeting. There is a shortcut to the site, the fields linked to an admin area. It's this little icon here, and we basically want to add another field called alias. And if we go to the fields, we'll see that there is already a field called alias, so we can simply use that field. So we'll go back to the admin views and we'll click on this shortcut for adding fields. and we're gonna basically click here and add an alias. We're gonna tell the system that this is an alias, and now we are moving both of these above the tabs, and we are creating the alias to be second in line, and the greeting we are going to let's see, make it a full width, the greeting. We're also going to go edit the greeting in a moment so that it's no longer a text field but a text area. Okay, so we got name, alias, all of that is in place. Save and close. Going back to fields, I'm going to open the greeting, and since there are some values I want to stay the same, I am going to select that XML definition and I'm going to copy it. Then I'm going to select text area. Then I'm going to paste that first XML in here. We obviously have to remove it again, but just so I can copy paste, I'm going to cut the name. We want to keep the same name. You can't just change the type, because the type up here needs to actually correspond with the type here. So just changing the type in there will not work. So with the label, we want to keep that the same. We want to add, let's see, add greetings as a description. We don't want the default text. And let's add the hint back again. We don't really need any of these other fields, so we can just remove them. We don't want the filter to be set to raw. We'd rather use the word string, since we don't want any HTML at this stage in our greeting. If you want HTML in the greeting, you can use the safe HTML. I see it's not in this list, but it actually does exist. Usually we would use the editor instead of just a text area. Anyway, so here we go. We got our text area in place, and I'm going to add just here span 12. I don't know how long that's going to still be there as a class, but I think it is still there. And now I think that should do it. Yeah, let's change this. Now, you know what? We don't need to change that. Save and close. Okay, since we didn't change any of the database values with this text field, we shouldn't have any issues. But we did add a new text field. So if we go to the compiler and we compile the component, you'll see that it dynamically incremented the version. And if we go without installing, we go to the component, you'll see that it hasn't actually updated the view because this was open. So before doing anything, I would suggest reopening the view, basically refresh the page, so that the changes be also basically shown. So now we can go back and simply install the new changes, and if we go to a hello world, we should be able to open the hello world and we should see the alias there, and if we click save, it should dynamically add a new alias. Now we'll have to do this for every item because the aliases are saved or created only once you save the item. So I'm just opening all of them quickly. Now usually a user using your component, you're only going to ship this component when you've got everything in place, I hope. and so they wouldn't have to do all this gymnastics to make sure that all the values are in place. And if by some reason they have to, you'll have to help them along with some custom scripting, I suppose. Anyway, so now that we've got all our items set and it actually has an alias, we can start working on those links. There's one more place we need to make a change, and that is in the dynamic get. If you remember, when we set it up, we didn't actually include the alias. So I'm going to copy this and then just change to just another view quickly and then back to this one so that we can get the alias there. So here's the alias that we want. We don't need all these, and we can just add that over there. So there we go, we've got the alias now also selected. Save and close. So we can check whether this alias is actually being brought to the page by adding a little, I call it production tricks. So we just do a little PHP dump here, var dump, and we just take all the items, copy, paste it in there and save. Now we go back to the compiler and just quickly compile this again. And install, go to the home page, refresh, and now you will see that it dumps all the values on the page and then displays them. So now you can look and you see, okay, well, fine, there's the alias, and it actually created that slug we spoke about. So we got the slug for every item, and that is the first step in setting up a well-formed link for opening one of these items. And I know what some of you might think, wow, that's quite a lot of things to do to get this to work. But I can tell you, if you want to build components for Joomla and you want to go outside of the box and build things that are actually unique and completely different from what other people are doing, then this is really just the basics. Okay, so we're gonna set up a href here around this name, but we are going to use PHP to basically take care of creating the link for us. So here we are simply going to say echo, and I'm going to go show you where we get the name, the class name, for what we want to do here. Okay, so back in the code, you'll see that there is in the helper class a file called router. So you can open that and you'll see that you have what is now called hello world helper route. And if we scroll down, we don't at this stage have, oh yes, we haven't added the site view for the single record. So there are some values missing here. Oh man, I should have first done that. Anyway, I'll go do that now. But we'll come back to this file. And there's another file, or I should say class, that works together with this class. And it's basically these two classes with their methods that we're going to use to actually build our link. Okay, so let's create that display site view. So I removed the var dump from this view, and I'm just going to save and close this. I could have said save and new. I'm just going to create another site view, and we're going to call this greet. We can't call it greeting because, like we said, there's already a greeting in the front, or greeted, that one might be better. We're gonna make a nice display here. So I'm using panel. I'm gonna copy the panel snippet and paste that in here. And the title, I'm going to make the name, and the content will obviously be the greeting. Now I don't want two of those, so I'm going to take out this one. So I've basically got one greeting set up here. It's not yet going to be up, there's no buttons here yet to edit it, but you'll basically view one greeting, and it will also show you who set up the greeting. And okay, now we can close this. So we've got this greeted site view, and we can now go to the admin area of the Joomla component area, and I'm going to click on here and actually add a site view to the component, same way we did before. I'm going to say I want greet. I don't want it to have an add menu. It must have meta. It's not a default view. I also want access there, and by default it's not public. So save and close. Now we'll compile the component again. Okay, I've compiled and installed it. If we now go back to that file I just opened previously, this hello world helper route, and we scroll down, we'll see that now has a method called greet route, and you basically pass it an ID and it constructs the URL for you. Now this component view doesn't have category, so it will skip this area, but it's a function that I wrote that should be able to basically work for any view. So you want to use this method and this abstract class. Now those of you that are a little bit interested in how this works, you'll see in the main file of the site view, you'll see that the router is actually also added as a helper class, and this is basically the name of this helper class, hello world helper route. And so that's the abstract class name. Going back to our site view of greetings to add our link, we now know the method name. So that's the method name, and it's an abstract class. Sorry, that's the class name. Now let's get the method name. So we go back to scroll down. That's the method name, so we can just copy it. It obviously needs to be corresponding to the view we want to open, and we want to give it the slug. So it's going to be item slug. But that's not the only function that we want to call here. There is another one I mentioned which works alongside this, and it's called the JRoute function. Actually class, I should say. So we would add the JRoute around this first method class, and that would basically add the other values to the URL that is required. Okay, so we've got our own helper class of our component. We give it the slug, which then gives it to the JRouter, which then echoes out the link to open this item. Great. Now let's save this and compile again to see it in action. We go to the front and reload the page, and when we click on one of these, it says not authorized to view greet. That means this specific group are not allowed to look at this. Now there are ways to prevent the link from showing up in the first place, but this is if for some reason you didn't actually put that custom script in place. You see, you can actually see how the backend generates some of this. So if we go into the code and we go to the admin area of the Hello World component and we open the model and we open greetings, sorry, not the model, actually the view, and then greetings, and we open the body and we open the view.html. Here you'll see that it is grabbing some permissions to know whether it should show certain buttons, and then here it's again setting up some permissions to see whether you are allowed to actually edit, here it is, to actually edit the greeting. And if you're not allowed to edit it, it just echoes the name. You see, it doesn't show you the link. So this area here is really a demonstration of what you want to do in the front. You don't want to always show the link to the item unless the person who's actually viewing this site is in the correct group of the site to be able to actually view the item. Now I'm not going to spend more time on this part because we want to also do an editing concept, which is really more interesting and what I would rather spend time on. So here I'm just going to go back into the admin view in the admin area and just change the permissions that the actual public could still open this view for now. So in the backend I go to options of the Hello World component, permissions, I scroll down. Again I'll see there is a new one called greet, and I'll change this to allowed for the public group and save and close out of there. Now if I go back to the front and click on this link, it actually opens it and it gives us the name James, it gives us the welcome to JCB, and the greetings was set by the super user. Okay, so it actually loads it as we expected. You can also see in the URL, this demo site of mine isn't fully search engine friendly setup, but it already generates that this is a greet to James, and the name James appears here because of the slug. The slug is used to generate the search engine optimization here. If we didn't have an alias, it would have given you 1 or 2 depending on the item ID. Okay, so that just gives you a quick demonstration of how to set up a front end that actually can open specific items. Now the next step is to actually make these items editable. Now, like I explained to you, in the admin area we're already doing some of this. So I'm going to just basically copy and paste most of the code from the admin area, and I would encourage you to do the same, unless you know enough that you can just do it without looking at how JCB did it. So I'm going to copy this string, and then I'm going to also copy this one, these few lines, and then I'm also going to use some of these. And I realized by looking at this first area that the checkout and this checkout value needs to be set on the page. I also need to make sure about this value because we need to check the user's authority on the page. So we need to check whether the user is set on the page. So we can go and do that and look at some code. I'm going to move some of this code and then we'll go to the front end of the code area. I want to add the option to edit the item in both the list as well as the single view. So I'm going to do it in the list view first, and that I'll demonstrate step by step and then when we go to the single view, I'm just going to place the code in place, and not going to explain too much because it's basically the same. So here in the side view of the list area, I'm going to PHP and I'm going to custom view script. It says add PHP script to the head of the file. So I'm going to paste this link in here, and we see that it basically has this view greetings, and the task is greeting edit. So that is the task, and it's going to be available in the edit variable. Okay, so that's the first part of the code we want up on the page. Now for the rest of it, we go back to the admin view again, the backend, and we see whether we need to grab these as well. So before grabbing them, let's open the corresponding side view so we can look at some of the code. Okay, so here is the greetings. I'm going to open this view HTML, and we'll see that the user is already being loaded onto the page. So we've already got the user. That's great. This is the items. Okay, let's look at this. It's always good for you to actually go and look at the code that JCB is writing. Seeing the code is what makes you familiar with how things work, and also helps you to detect when something doesn't work, why, and how to fix it. So since we know that the user is on the page, and we go to the site, the admin area, this area, we see that it's accessing the user in the same way. It's using this as an object, user, and asking whether it has authority on the core manage to check in. And then also it basically checks and gets the checkout user details, and we'll see why in a moment. But we don't have the checkout user on the page. So what we're going to do is we're going to quickly also get those values by going to the dynamic get and making sure that those values get brought to the page as well. So we go to list greetings, and again, like before, we just copy all those values and just tweak away and then back. And the values we now want to make sure also comes along is basically, I see it's a value that it doesn't by itself add to the selection, but you can add it in because you know it is in the database. It's just that this table selection only shows at this stage the actual values that that it knows belongs to the view. I think I need to update this in JCB. It is a little tweak which I haven't done. So it's not showing the checkout and checkout by values, but you can type it in by just going, and then those values will also be brought to the front of this view. So basically the checkout and the checkout time, actually we don't need the checkout time, only the checkout, basically who checked it out. We could add the time, but I'm not going to demonstrate that during this tutorial. We're already almost over an hour and so a few minutes, so I'm just going to use the checkout for now. Save and close. So we've updated our dynamic get, and that means our values are on the page and we can move our code into place. We'll need to add it inside of this for each loop, since this code is actually working with the item itself. Okay, so we've got the code in there. We're calling the user. We're also checking the item checkout to the user ID, making sure if it's 0. We're checking whether the checkout user. Now let's go get the rest of the code we need. So again, in the admin view, we're going to go with this area here and just copy that. We want to make a few adaptations because in the end of the day, the front end is a little different from the back end in that it is only the back end only displays an edit view. The front end also displays a read view, so we want to make it a little different. You can pause the video to see some of the things I've done here, but in simple terms, I've basically got the edit here, where I'm editing, echoing the edit link, and I'm adding the item, and I'm putting in a little icon which then you can click. And here I'm checking whether you have permission to actually edit this item. So if we save this and refresh the home page, it should actually not change anything because the public doesn't have permission to edit it at this stage. Okay, that icon should be pencil, not edit. Okay, so let's save this and compile it to see it in action. Install it, and we reload the home page. And as you can see, it doesn't show those little buttons. Now, if we go to the back end and we go to options and we change that the public is allowed to edit, and let's say they may not change state. Yeah, let's just do that. They're allowed to edit, and let's open the front again. We now see that it shows the edit pencil. Let's click on that, and we see it opens the edit area where it can actually now add the exclamation and click on save. Save and close. And it tells us that the message was saved successfully. If we now open that greeting, we see that it has the exclamation. So our attempt to integrate or to make our items editable on the front end within the control of permission groups has actually worked very effectively. If we again revoke the permissions and refresh the page, then suddenly those links are gone. And even if somebody were to try and circumvent the system by having in the URL paste in the link to edit that specific item, and it will actually say that it's not permitted. So the permissional structure is actually armed and will protect the item from being edited by that group. So again, we gave the public permission to edit, but now the question is, can we also give it permission to create? So going back to greetings, let's add an option to create an item. Okay, I've added this button here with a link to create an item, but I'm not adding any checks around it. But you'll basically need the same kind of check as you're using here, except that there are some shortcut. Let me show you. So basically around the button we added this PHP that checks the user's authority to create for the core of this component. If yes, then it will show the button. If no, the button will not show. So that is to control the visibility of the button. So let's save this and then compile and install to see it in action. So we see the button doesn't show, and that is because currently we've got a component set that the public cannot actually create. If we allow creating for the public and we refresh the page, we'll see that now it actually shows. Sorry, that's the different view. It's this one. Refresh this page. There we go. Now if we click on it, it will open an area where we can create an item. So here we can set a new name and then save and close. We get this save not permitted, and this must mean that we haven't granted enough permissions for the public user to actually create an item. See, giving it the option to create an item is not enough, because there are fields that you need also access to before you can create an item. So let's try again, but first giving it more permissions. So we've granted it basically all the permissions that it needs. We go to the front, and now we click create greeting, save and close, and there we go. We've saved the item. We can again edit the item, we can close, and we can view. And as you can see, it's all working as expected. So our Hello World tutorial is nearly at its end. We have within this tutorial demonstrated to you how to create a Hello World component, list its items, open individual items, and edit those items, as well as creating new items, all based on the permissional structures of the component. So if we were to change these permissions back to not allowed, and we now refresh the front, we'll see that now we can only view the items. And even more, if we go back and we want to control the actual viewing of the greet items, not to be visible to the public, but maybe only to, let's say, managers, we could do that. So you can manage that kind of control over your items, without actually a lot of custom code. If you click on it now, it will tell you don't have authority to view it. Now you can add basically custom scripting to remove the link so that it doesn't even look clickable if the person doesn't have access to view it. But that's already, we've gone so far over the time and trying to demonstrate to you some of the basic principles of setting up an Hello component in JCB. I trust you've enjoyed this tutorial. By far it doesn't usually take this long to actually build a Hello World component. In fact, there is an older tutorial where we managed to build a Hello World component in a very shorter time, but I illustrated and demonstrated and explained a little more here to help you guys along to actually build components with JCB, and that you'd realize that JCB is really actually a very powerful application. I mean, I haven't even gone to the code this time and shown you all that it's written, but I mean, just from the compiler we already got 13,000 lines of code, which would have taken you 5-8 hour days to write, which is about 39 hours. And I think for a basic component that's quite a lot of code, and it's because that it's already integrating a lot of permissional structures and version control. I mean, if I was to open the greetings and just open James, remember we added that little exclamation mark, we could check the version and we can see the changes and when it was made, and we can actually review some of the previous versions, and we can even go back to those versions. Now that kind of integration with your history component is done automatically by just adding history, and so is many of the other features that JCB is adding to your component, like export of data, import of data, batch changes that you can make, as well as a whole lot of other concepts which is just beyond the scope of what we had time for today. Well, enjoy coding, and yes, if you have any issues, please go to GitHub. First check out the wiki page, check the tutorials, and if you just think you've discovered a bug, you're most welcome to open an issue, and we'll see what we can do in trying to resolve that for you. We would like to invite other PHP programmers to really get involved on the JCB GitHub community and help us improve JCB so that it can become a home for us to manage the troubled waters of open source development. Thank you.